So if there's not any questions on that, then I think we'll go ahead and get started. Ann, is there a quorum present?
Yes, everyone's present.
Okay, since there's a quorum, I'd like to start this regular meeting of the Board of Uplift Education, Tuesday, January 26th. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Welcome. I did have one thing I wanted to pass out each way, and this is the commencement dates for our various schools. And we would be thrilled if board members would try to make it to at least one commencement this year. So if you would look at your calendars, and Yasmin, should they let people know if they have one that they can attend?
Stephen will send an email and ask for RSVPs, and if you could then let them know which ones you'll be attending, that would be great, and we'll let campuses know.
Okay, so then we'll move forward to the consent agenda, and it's minutes from 3 previous board meetings, one of which was a regular board meeting and 2 special board meetings. And is there any discussion of the minutes? And if not, if I could have a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you very much. We'll now move into our regular reports, and there will be no vote required on those. And Stacy Lawrence will start with our financial report. Thanks, Stacy.
Okay. You're welcome. Thanks, Tony. So the finance slides, I kind of feel a little bit weird behind you, talking to you here. This packet was in your pre-read packet. That's our typical update. I'll start with our finance dashboard. As you recall, we're sort of looking on the top 2 here, enrollment and attendance as our key drivers of our state revenue number and giving us comfort in our ability to hit our budget. We are currently still above our enrollment budget by a few scholars. So that gives us comfort in our state revenue forecast for the year, which is looking favorable to budget. Attendance is still holding right in around where we have budget attendance slightly over at 97.2. From a cash and liquidity perspective, this in the bottom left is our forecast of cash and liquidity at June 30th of 2016, which is the date at which our bond covenant of 60 days is measured. And our covenant of 60 days, it looks like we're going to be 7 days above that at June 30th with our current forecast. So we have just a little bit of wiggle room there above our bond covenant, which is the first year that kicks in, so it gives us comfort that that's the position we find ourselves. We're well above our 95-day liquidity covenant, expecting to be at about 135 days of liquidity. The difference, as a reminder, is just the factoring in the state receivable that we have at June 30th. The state still owes us 2 months worth of revenue for the preceding school year. So that's where we get the additional liquidity from. And then from an expense management perspective, we are still tracking to be at or better than our expense budget for the year. We don't have a slide on it, but one thing I will give you some context. The Finance Committee asked for, and I think we'll add this going forward, but just some context around staffing, given that 90 million of this $130 million expense budget is staffing related. We are currently about 93% staffed on 1,680 positions throughout the company. That is 42 more than the board approved with the budget in June. 35 of those incremental positions are funded through program funds. So special education, state compensatory education, Title I, our TIF grant, our startup grant. So of those positions that have been added, we have supplemental funding sources to justify adding those. There are 5 more gen ed and 2 more locally funded positions than we have in the budget. So I wasn't planning to walk all the way through all the detailed slides, but happy to answer any questions that the board may have.
I would just be curious with everything, and this could be a question for Josh also, with everything that's happening in public bond markets, how are our bonds that are already out there trading, and how are, do we know if a charter school goes to the market today, would the result be dramatically different than what we've achieved in the last couple of years?
Can't speak to how our bonds are trading specifically, but I can tell you, I was just on the phone with our bankers Monday, and the 30-year municipal market index, which is sort of AAA rated index, the 30-year MMD is about 50 basis points lower than it was just in December, which is 60 or 70 lower than it was when we issued back in June. So the market is relatively steady between now and our next issuance. We should see improved pricing. Josh, you want to add on?
Yeah, that's much what I would have said. I mean, the 30-year treasuries moved in our favor, and general municipal bonds relative to treasuries have traded well. So, absent any abnormalities, things should be pretty favorable. I would ask, if we can get our bankers to send us monthly updates on trading activity and on Uplift bonds. It would take me 15 minutes to pull off Bloomberg, so they should be able to do that for us as a service.
Any other discussion on finance or questions for Stacy? Okay. Stacy, thank you very much. Good news. So now we'll go to our next report, our academic update. Thank you, Rich.
So as we're pulling up the slide deck, I wanted to just share with you the academic update that was sent with the pre-read. We had a strong second quarter, a lot of great things happening. Second quarter events, we administered our second round of common assessments, K through 12, across all content areas. On the last day before break, the last day and a half, we had some professional development for teachers to look over their data, to look over their action plans, and to work collaboratively across the network with their like grade level content peers. During that time, on the Friday before break, all of our leaders came together, and our deans and directors, we had an intersession where they reviewed the second quarter data, as well as talked through some of the action plans that they needed to create for the second semester. We also ran some fun analysis. Our director, let me to sit over there. Oh, okay, yeah. We have our director of data strategy. His name is Tom Hay. He's part of the Harvard Strategic Data Project. And one of the things that he's been working on over the last few years is working on a predictive model. So one of the data points that I'm going to walk through with you is around, at this given point, if we were to take STAR, what's the likelihood of students passing or not passing the test at this point based on the data from our fall MAP administration, which tells us where the students are on a nationally normed basis and how they performed across our first two interim assessments, our common assessments. And then we've created a dashboard for our deans and directors that they can then be more specific about targeted interventions for those students as we near our testing window in March and April. Just also as a heads up, one of the things that you can anticipate in the month of February at the next board meeting, this is a month where we're giving our winter MAP administration across K-8, as well as our ACT line of tests. All those data points are coming in at the end of this month, and then we'll have revised STAR predictions based on the norm tests that we're doing this month. So if we can go to the next slide. The executive summary that was part of the week, we're performing relatively very close to what we did last year on our common assessments. So that's great. With the data that's coming in this month from both math and ACT, we'll be able to see whether our growth and our performance, whether that's similar or different from last year. My hunch, just on the preliminary data that I've looked at, is that our growth rates have dropped about 5%, but I think our relative performance in terms of where the average percentile is per grade level has gone up. So I'll be confirming that with you all next month. Across all schools at Uplift, we've been seeing just a tighter distribution of scores. I'll share with you an example. In our elementary schools, there wasn't a school that was off by more than 10 points on average from the Uplift mean. So it's great that our schools are more bunched together on our common assessments. We are seeing some gains at specific grade areas and subject levels from our improvement required schools that are being supported through the work of the leadership team there, the managing directors, and our central team. There are a couple of schools that I'd like to flag. Hampton, both primary and middle school, as well as Heights Middle School, are schools where we are seeing some data trends that we definitely do need to address, and our managing directors and our teaching and learning team are supporting that very actively. And last but not least, one of the great things, our new schools, Uplift Gratis, with the K-1-2 program down in DeSoto, very strong performance with a new director, or not a new director, but a new to primary director. She was a middle school director. She's doing extremely well. I know that there were some concerns after CA1 at Uplift Lee. They've been able to turn it around. I'm very thankful for the support that leadership team at Uplift Lee is providing. Additionally, our director at Uplift Summit, Amanda, she's been coming in once or twice a week to give guidance on Uplift Lee, and we've seen kind of evidence of that. They're doing much better than they did in CA1. So that's the executive summary for our academic results. So the next slide.
Part of why she was coming in is because our director at Uplift Lee is on maternity leave right now. So it was just a wonderful example of teamwork to have Amanda willing to come spend extra time with that team while Danny is out.
Yep. So I'm still working on how to best capture our common assessment data. And so I tried to simplify and give you the best snapshot possible. And so the methodology I used here was looking at the average difference from the mean from kindergarten through second grade. On the next slide, it's 3rd through 5, and then middle school and high school. So you can see relatively the force rank as it relates to the average difference of each student from the Uplift mean. That'll give you a relative sense as to who's high performing, who's below average. But as you look at these two graphs for K through second grade, where we have almost close to 3,600 students, the distribution is really tight. Even the schools on the bottom are within 5 to 10% of that Uplift average, and it's really great. And I wanted to shout out a couple of schools that are doing great work. North Hills, Grand, Triumph, Peak, and Luna. Just K2 performance has been very strong. Again, to share with you the Lee Gratis progress right out of the gate has been strong, and just relative strong praise for Luna Primary. At Luna Primary, that was a school that across every math and reading across every grade level, they were healthily above the Uplift average. So that's great for them. It's one of our other schools where we have a principal on maternity leave, so our deans have been doing a great job holding it down in Chloe's absence. There are a couple of concerns in K2. We're very closely monitoring our first and second grade performance based on the data from the last couple of years. That's an area where we haven't hit growth targets as healthily as in other grades. And then our IR schools, Mighty and Pinnacle, while they're on the lower end of things in terms of common assessment performance, they're within 5 to 10% of the network average, but we definitely need to monitor that as those kids move on to third grade and beyond over the next few years. The next slide, 3rd through 5th grade. Really great things happening here at North Hills, Luna, Summit Peak, and Mighty. Mighty especially is really exciting to see them in the in the top 3 in reading in 3rd, 4th, 5th grade. And as you know, that's been a school that has had a lot of intervention over the last 2 years in our primary program, and it's really exciting to see them track. Really praise just a narrow range. Everybody was within less than 10% from the network average, which is great. However, there are some areas of concern. Hampton, 3rd and 4th grade, particularly in math, is definitely a concern, as well as Meridian, 3rd grade, and Pinnacle's 4th grade, if you break that down a little bit. But one of the things that we're seeing is that at those schools, we are seeing just stronger execution than we saw in previous years as results from the students. If you turn to the next page, this is where it's just kind of a representation of our statistical predictive model. If STAR was administered today, this is largely how things would fall. Based on the data from last year, our predictions are within plus or minus 5 to 3%. So, we do feel that this is very actionable data that our teaching and learning team as well as schools can use to make adjustments to interventions for students. At this point, we would want to see projections at passing rates above 65%, knowing that over the course of the second semester, we would eat into anywhere from 5 to 15% of the students in red. So I identified the schools on this list, schools that we need to be supporting more actively. Hampton in math. It's an area of concern. We're seeing stronger gains in reading than we are in math on that campus. Heights, 4th grade, Infinity, 4th grade, Meridian, and Mighty, 4th and 5th grade math, and then Pinnacle, 4th and 5th grade math. So these are schools with, right now, anywhere north of 35 to 45% that right now would not be in a place where they're passing the test. So we're hoping that just some strategic interventions could cut that down realistically by 10 to 15%. On the next slide, we have our reading analysis presented in the same way. And here, Hampton, 4th grade, Heights, 4th and 5th grade. The 5th grade at Heights, these are all new students, so we're going to expect that they are not going to fare as well as our 5th graders who have come up through our Uplift system, but we're seeing some strong performance from them on common assessments and on maps, so we feel pretty positive about how they're trending. Mighty's 5th grade in reading, Pinnacle 5th grade, and Triumph, their 4th grade. So again, there are a couple of schools that came up a couple of times, and some schools that have a grade level content area that they need to address before we start testing in. Our 5th graders take it in March. Our 5th graders take it in March. The 3rd and 4th graders take their tests in April. So I'll pause right there to see if there are any questions around our primary schools.
I just have one where you have a school that has a very, very broad distribution. Are they doing more breakouts of the kids to try to focus on the different math levels versus I can see where there's really narrow, the teacher, even if it's negative, the teacher could really focus in that one area. But if they've got a super broad distribution, are they doing some different techniques?
Yeah, I think it depends from school to school, but a lot of the schools do use intervention or reteach blocks where they do break out students by ability group for specific skills or standards. So, and a lot of, really the great thing about having dashboards like this is that it's very easy to be able to pull up this report, look at who are the students in red, look at what are some skill gaps that those students specifically have to tailor those interventions. A lot of after-school tutoring, before-school tutoring is designed around these dashboards.
So Angela, I can give a very specific example about Uplift Heights Primary. They were sharing that basically with their 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders, they all are assigned to, obviously their homeroom teacher that they're with for most of the day, but for their reading intervention, they have grouped the children by ability levels, and then those children go to a specific teacher. So for example, one of the for fifth grade teachers deals with the fourth and fifth quintile. Another one's focused truly on the right at the national mean group of children. And so that's just one example of how they meet the needs when there is such a wide range.
I would also, just before I go into middle school, these are very conservative estimates. We're trying to be on the safer side, but I do think that, oh, yes.
In the common assessment analysis where you're showing the deviation between the mean, having North Hills as kind of that deviator, skewing the mean up, does it really, there's a lot of them I'm thinking that might be 1 or 2% below the mean, that if North Hills wasn't there, they would be much closer.
That is, I think you're right about that. I would say that, let's say in our fourth and fifth grade, like if we can go back a couple slides. North Hills, they have about 300 of the, I want to guess maybe 2,000 third, fourth, fifth graders that we have across the network. So you're absolutely right about that. You would definitely have some schools that are just right under, just on the top end of the red line, be in the green if we were to take North Hills out.
Is there enough consistency in the CAs year over year for the same grade level to look at how we performed last year at that grade level and this year? Because we're looking at a lot of campuses relative to each other, but when measuring their growth year over year, and maybe even looking at the median across Uplift year over year, to Richard's point, are we satisfied with that?
That's a great question. Any given year, we change anywhere from 50 to 25% of a common assessment, just to make sure that the items are the best items we can. But our data team is tracking that. So when they do this analysis, they're also looking at the items from previous years that had reliability, so that if those questions are asked again, that does inform of the model that we're presenting today.
So are we measuring our change year over year, and are we satisfied with it, or how do we?
Yeah, the change from year to year is roughly very similar to how we performed last year in CA2 across our elementary schools.
Exactly what kind of interventions are we doing to some of the ones that are showing up kind of consistently?
Yeah, I think, let's say at Hampton, for example, in their elementary school, we put one of our best instructional coaches supporting both new teachers and students who need extra support. I know that our MDs who visit those campuses are looking at those classrooms with targeted observations. Oftentimes those principals will email our data team to get more analysis or more focused next steps in terms of actions. And then to Yasmin's point, just looking at the data to create smaller groups based on need and acting on those and assessing the quality of those reteach cycles is something that a lot of our schools do.
So I know that our managing directors are sitting in on some campuses where we want to pay close attention. They're literally sitting in grade level team meetings with teachers while they're looking at data to make sure that children are being grouped appropriately and lesson plans are being revised to be able to know I need to pull this group of 5 during independent practice. We need to make these adjustments because what we don't have happen, there's a lot of time during the school day that we need to be maximizing versus just going directly to before school or after school tutoring.
So going to middle schools, again, pretty strong performance across our middle schools in terms of just the range of performance that we've seen, just getting narrower and narrower each year. Areas of strength, North Hills, Infinity, Summit, and Peak all performed very well over this last cycle. Just special praise for Williams. Williams, we have a new director of our middle school, and they are really right at network average. In previous years, they were definitely south of network average in previous years. So just really happy about the transition our new leader, Jacob Staples, there has made with his leadership team and his staff.
It's also loved by the parents. Yes. Every time Deborah and I go to a town hall at Williams, half the comments are sharing praise to their director, which is great.
Special praise for Williams Mighty Middle School is off to a great start. They have a program where they're leveraging some math tutors on site to give some extra support for over almost 160 sixth graders that we have that are new from the district schools that came in pretty low. They definitely have the second lowest math start point across our network, so we're leveraging those tutors really well. And I'd like to just shout out Uplift Luna Middle School, just very strong performance. And this was the first time where we had a school that performed better than North Hills on the algebra common assessment. North Hills has been traditionally very strong in math still, but the 8th grade group in algebra at Luna performed exceptionally well. I'm really excited to see that school is performing at higher levels than they did in previous years. There are two concern areas. Heights, particularly in the 6th and 7th grade at Heights. The 6th graders, as you know, those are all new students from the community coming from district schools, and just the amount of catch-up we have to do, that is our lowest start point. The average student at Heights is starting 6th grade at the very early 4th grade level, so they're on average 2 grade levels behind, which means that half of that cohort is below that, and just the amount of catch-up they have to do. So we do need to be focused on them. They also do have the math tutoring, but it's not as sticky as well as it is in Mighty because they're comparable start points. So we're looking into how we can better execute those math interventions in 6th grade. And then Uplift Hampton, just looking at the scores in the 6th and 7th grade, we definitely need to make sure that they're adjusting to their data and responding really well. They were lower than we had expected. They have about an average math start point in middle school, so we should see those scores at average, and they're not where they need to be.
Hey, Rich, what drove that performance at Luna, and is there, when you identify pockets of overperformance, is there any best practices, kind of codification and sharing amongst the schools?
Yeah, I haven't really spent too much time at Luna Middle School, but that's something that I can look into. I know that the 8th grade teacher that they have there is a pretty exceptional teacher that they have in algebra.
Yeah, and understanding what she's doing.
Yeah, absolutely. She came from Idea Public Schools, so she has had strong teaching experience in another charter network before coming to Uplift, so we're really excited about what we're training. Yeah, I'll report back on that. Middle school, here are the pass rate predictions. Again, the area of concern, again, the schools that are above 35% in the red, if they were to take the test right now. Hampton and Heights are concerned. Mighty 6th grade, even though they're trending pretty positively, it is a big group of 6th graders that are new to our network that we do need to monitor, especially because that is one of our improvement required lines that we have. I'll jump over to high school really quickly. And for high school, we give interim assessments across all high school content areas, but just to trim down the focus, I wanted to just share with you just how we feel our high schools are going to do as it relates to some of the end-of-course exams that they do have to take as required for high school graduation here in the state of Texas. So English 1 and 2, we reported on, and algebra. Here in algebra, we have both 7th, 8th, and 9th graders taking algebra, and one of the things that we need to be very mindful of is that there's a small pocket, I would say, probably 5 to 8% of 9th graders across our network who have not yet passed the algebra test to graduate from a Texas high school. So we chipped into that a little bit this winter because there's a retake window in December, but we still have a little bit of a ways to go to make sure that all of our students, or particularly on to 10th grade, having passed their core end of course exams. So that's an area of concern. also looking at English 1 and 2. At Mighty and at Heights in Williams, we do need to monitor our English 1 and 2 pass rates. Usually on those tests in May over the last few years, our pass rates have been anywhere from 85 to around 85%. But we have really two pockets of schools that are in the 95 plus category, and then traditionally Hampton, Heights, Luna, they've been in the 70 to 80% range, but that's a test that the kids must pass. So really monitoring English 1 and 2 very aggressively in the 9th and 10th grade, especially at those three schools that did not see as strong as performance as we would like. But again, a lot of the same interventions, making sure that they're on pace to pass those tests. Any thoughts, questions? And I would love some feedback on whether this kind of view on our common assessments is kind of the summary view that you all would like to see at these meetings. I'm more than happy to provide the granular data by course, by school, but really I just wanted to be able to give you all the bird's eye view of how our schools are performing relative to the Uplift average.
I just really wanted to applaud you for the focus on the academic data. I was really reminded about this. I know we always focus on it, but it's not like this everywhere. And the Dallas Morning News reported this week on a superintendent that hadn't focused on mid-year academic data at all and wasn't aware of kind of where the students were. And really, it's gone viral and is really impacting the foundation community and the giving community. And I'm getting a lot of calls about it. So I just want to applaud you for that work and make sure that that's a part of the discussion with the investors tomorrow, because it's a hot topic right now in the education space, focusing on student data and where students are. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that feedback.
Rich, the only thing that I saw, and it may not be that the rest of the board members are interested in it, but I was wondering on these charts, if we might be able to have a parentheses that indicates what the population is in addition to the percentage. So we'd have the number of students at those locations that represent that bar.
Okay, great. Thank you.
And I guess the map will show the growth data.
Yes. So we'll be doing at the next board meeting a side-by-side, both MAP and ACT for our high schools that our students are taking this month, just so you can see relatively last year, are we on the same growth trajectory as in previous years, as well as their performance levels.
Okay. Thank you very much. That's great data. With that, I think we will switch gears and get into some action items. And Ann, I think you have the first action item for us to consider.
I do. I have two resolutions to amend our charter, and these were in the pre-read. Just to give a little bit of background, as you're aware, with Pinnacle, we have fifth graders that are going into sixth grade, but we don't actually have room for them at the current location. And it would be another year till our destination school is done. So what we've decided to do is try to keep them as a cohort together, the sixth graders, but because we have space at Gratis, we want to move the sixth graders to Gratis for 1 year. We want to keep them as Pinnacle kids, but then bring them back to the destination school in a year. So what that requires to do that is we need to amend the charter to authorize sixth grade under the Uplift Pinnacle School, and then also to amend the charter and get permission from TEA to relocate those sixth graders for one year, and then we'll bring them back. That's kind of the formality we have to go through to make sure our charter reflects where our students are. Any questions? And this is one we need to vote on and then have signatures.
Okay. So if there's not discussion, can I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. The second action item has to do with a governance committee. And I think, as everybody knows, Dustin had to step down from our board effective last month, I believe. And so we are without a governance chairman currently. I consulted Dustin, consulted Michael, who's our longtime governance committee member and past chair, and a consensus formed around a very long time board member who's been very effective, Ardo Fuentes. And so I would like for the board to consider, and we can have discussion on this topic, nomination of Ardo as the governance chairman. So, any questions? Or usually when we have a new board member come up through governance committee, there's a pre-read to introduce them to the board, but since Ardo has been on the board for a long time, we felt like that wasn't necessary. Any discussion?
I think you do a great job.
I concur.
If there's no questions, can I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you. That's what happens when you don't show up for a meeting, you end up sharing something. So, by the way, Ardo is out of town on business, and he will be at our annual meeting tomorrow, which is terrific. And so then, I guess we turn it over to Stacy. Are you going to go over
Yes.
land swap?
This is a topic that was before you in December, as well as we tried to extend the contract. We actually need to issue a new contract for our land swap at North Hills. And just a reminder, it's about 1.5 acres of land that we're swapping for about 1 acre of land plus some cash. And the reason we're having to issue a new contract, this is land that we originally acquired 1.5 acres that we're giving up with tax exempt bonds. And so anytime that any of that property is exchanged or would leave the purview of our master indenture, then we need TEFRA approval, which is a tax exempt process. The last TEFRA approval that was in place expired January 19th. And so that's part of the reasons. We are also modifying the contract to reflect, remove what were before conditions that needed to happen. Precedent and closing, a lot of those have already occurred. So like reviewing title policies, survey, easement agreements, things like that have all been reviewed. Are basically all agreed to now by all parties. It's essentially the same transaction. Randy, anything you would want to?
No, I mean, basically, but for the procedural requirement for the bonds, everything is ready to close. It just simply would not get all the final pieces in place by the 19th.
Any questions or discussion? Is that the case? If I could have a motion to approve?
We approve the proposed resolutions.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Stacy. Thank you to the Facilities Committee for the hundreds of hours of work that went into
Swapping land we already
one,
own.
yeah, one small land parcel. So now we'll get into our information items on today's agenda. There's no vote on these items, and we'll start with the bellwether compensation. Yes.
Great. So I just wanted to give a quick update on our work with Bellwether, and we have some school leaders in the room who have been part of the steering committee and doing the heavy lifting on this for the past couple of months. So as you all know from our meeting in December, we were able to share out with our staff right before the holiday break, literally a couple of hours before they all left us, some enhancements that we are going to be able to make going into next school year. It really was responsive to their feedback. And so I feel like what we've shown our staff is just how seriously we take the focus groups and the surveys that they participate in. The changes we announced before the holiday break, one was responding to the feedback around pushing back the start date of school. We had a pretty large gap relative to our traditional ISD peers, and that was putting some pressure on particularly staff members who have children in traditional ISD schools in terms of trying to figure out childcare. So we pushed that back by 1 week. Secondly, we created some flexibility for our returning teachers who are performing at a certain level around how they participate and engage in summer professional development. Really understanding that a one-size-fits-all model doesn't have to apply to every teacher, and providing, again, a little bit more flexibility there. And then we announced that for returning teachers, their minimum salary would be $48,000, which provides a meaningful increase for several of our teachers in the network. And that minimum and how higher that goes will be based on their performance level. So it still builds in our philosophy of rewarding our teachers based on performance, but also putting setting a floor underneath it to try to bridge the gap that we've seen with our traditional peers, which is obviously driven by our gap in state funding of $1,000 per student. As we look ahead to the recruiting season, our minimum salary for brand new teachers who have no teaching experience is $46,000, and then there are high needs stipends that will go on top of that based on if they're teaching a foreign language, math, special education. There's a state list of approved high needs areas, and so there will be additional stipends for that. We also, for experienced teachers, again, to recognize that we value performance, even for those new to our network. We have something new this year that our recruitment team will be seeing and our campus directors will have access to, where we can give additional stipends for teachers that are coming into our network with experience who have shown they've had great outcomes for kids. And we're really excited to, again, send that positive signal. We also heard feedback where everyone really enjoys and appreciates the culture we have around celebrating performance and really recognizing it across all members of our campuses. So it's not just a program for teachers. All types of employee groups participate in rewarding excellence, but it's a little bit more complicated for our non-teaching staff, where data isn't always as clear. And so we have launched, as our continuation work with Bellwether, what are refinements we want to make to rewarding excellence that encompass our campus non-instructional staff, which could be hourly workers. Right now they participate. Does that look slightly different than what it does for our teaching staff? What does it look like for our operation leadership, our school leadership teams, our central office staff? And so Bellwether has a cross-employee group committee that is working on that. And we just launched a survey a couple of days ago where responses are already coming in. We had already surveyed our teaching staff, so this really is for all non-teaching staff members to make sure they realize that while a lot of focus has been on our teaching staff recently, we equally are invested in all the critical employees who support our campuses and lead our campuses on a daily basis. So that is a core part of the continuation of our work with Bellwether, is what are refinements to rewarding excellence for all employees, teachers and non-teacher groups. I don't have anything to share yet on what that looks like. We're still too early on in the process. And then lastly, a core part of the continuation with Bellwether is making sure that we have the right training and communications tools in place for our school leaders and all people managers as they navigate having to explain to individuals, here's how your compensation is going to look enhanced for next year. Those are obviously very individualized conversations, and we want to make sure that they are equipped to be able to have them and feel deeply supported, and then obviously can explain any enhancements to rewarding excellence. So I just wanted to give you an update of how the work is continuing, where it's focused. So far, all the feedback we've heard has been deeply positive. I have several school leaders here. I don't know if any of them want to share how your staff has reacted to the emails prior to the holiday break, but obviously we'd love to hear any feedback you want to share.
I can just share that my team was really grateful for being a part of the focus groups and the online focus groups, and that those were scheduled at times that were convenient, and felt like their feedback was reflected in the email that came out before Christmas break. So I think it helped our staff to go into Christmas break feeling really heard. Even if some of the outcomes maybe weren't exactly what they were hoping for, they felt like they had been heard, and that the network had made a genuine interest to listen and take action.
And I would second that. I think there were surveys that went around the calendar and PD as well as compensation, and the general consensus similar. It's just people feeling like they're being valued and being heard and getting to have a voice. So there was excitement.
And obviously what our staff really was hoping for is that we would be able to get to a minimum of 50,000, and we just financially could not make that work with the funding gap. So, so that was the one place we were able to get as close as possible, but not get all the way there.
Yes, and I just have one question. Certainly I'm not an instructional expert by any means, but when you talk about performance, is there anything that's built into the system before or what's being looked at as we move forward with Bellwether's current recommendations or next step that says, if I'm an educator and the class that's rising into my grade level is one that's further behind than the typical peer group that I might have, does that factor into my performance?
It already does today. So everything is measured on growth. So that way it does. You could have a group of super high kids, and then your target is based on how you grow them, or they could be farther behind. And so from that standpoint, we actually have heard no, I will call negative feedback, because everyone feels like it's pretty fair, as it's all growth-based measure versus an absolute outcome that you're trying to hit.
Thank you.
So, yeah, so what kind of overall increase will we able to get?
For brand new hires, we've cut the gap in half. We're probably now 5 to 8% off a traditional ISD. And for our current employees, we're probably 5% off. So I would say roughly we cut our delta in half in terms of our gap.
So we were.
What is the top of our range versus what we think some traditional?
That part we look great. So because of our performance-based rewards, our teachers who have spent more time in the network and who've historically they tend to perform on the upper end of our teachers, do very well and look comparable to their peers. So the gap we face is literally those first couple of years, because we have traditional districts who are coming in at 50, 52, and we just weren't able to match that just yet.
Did you do an analysis on what it would have taken you to get to the 50?
We know what that number is, and it's obviously it's still millions of dollars to get to that gap. Nisha, who I don't think is here. There you are, Nisha. You know that exact total dollar if we wanted to close the gap? Get to minimum 50. You might not off the top of your head.
From right now to 50?
Yeah. Well, the incremental from where we're going to be to get to 50.
I don't know that number.
Maybe another 2 to 3 million.
At least, yeah.
At least another 2 to 3 million, Abby, because the issue becomes every year as you're growing, you're adding to your employee base. So the number gets bigger, but roughly another 2 to 3 million from already what we've done.
Did Bellwether have any other suggestions about if you really decided that had to be it, here are the other operational changes, levers?
They agree that there is no, it's the same guidance we got from Charter School Growth Fund. There is no austerity lever to pull. There's nothing in our budget. We are so lean from an expense standpoint that gets you that 2 to 3 million. Your only levers are revenue. So you basically have to internally do it through student count, which we talked about, or you have to do it through philanthropy.
Yeah, when you mentioned the calendar, one of the new things the state came up with just recently was that they could have a 6-minute longer day.
Yes.
And not have so many days. So we were all kind of on level playing field there.
Yeah.
I'm not recommending that we change it, is that gonna create another?
It was all factored in,
issue?
so,
Okay.
Ann's team that does all of our state reporting, Rich's data team, actually was this wonderful cross-department central office collaboration to come up with our calendar and make sure that all of the new requirements around required minutes were met, which is obviously different from originally required number of days. So we are in complete compliance with the new guidelines and fully meet them with the adjustments we made to the calendar.
Any other questions or discussion?
And we will accept any gifts to go towards fully closing the gap. So feel free to see Deborah on your way out. You have it better.
We'll work on it tomorrow at the annual
That's
meeting.
right.
Thank you, Yasmin. It's, exciting to get the program. I'm sorry we couldn't get to our goal on the 50,000. Exciting that we got. Rich, you're next on the agenda, the teacher fellowship?
We updated the agenda, and so that is going to be at a future meeting. They were not ready
okay.
yet.
All right. So then the next thing on the agenda is board training.
Yes, as you know, the spring is when we do the required board training and offering for particularly our voting board members. This is a draft of the schedule, so I still may have to tweak some of the sessions, but in general, these are the dates. And I just wanted to make a point, what we did try to do this year in looking at some of these topics is make it the next level up, because all of you have been through the basic training, so we tried to look at all sort of the required areas and what is something more we could add to what you already know. And like I say, I may have to tweak it a little bit, but I would also ask if there's anything that you would like part of the board training, let us know so we can build that in and really rely on all our team and our experts to help present this for the board. And even though it's required for the voting board, any other board members willing to come is invited.
Question, in the past, we've also, if you had a hard time with the time slot, there's online training that you can do offered through the state. I assume there's still classes you can take online.
Yes, and I'll get that information to you.
Terrific.
So is this still going to be done via email to the group that says on this, and these are typically on Fridays?
Friday morning,
7:30,
and last year we moved them here to the central office because the board was comfortable with that. It's easier than squeezing into Madeline. So yes, Stephen will send out those notices, and if you can RSVP to him, then we'll be able to plan.
Any questions? Okay, the next thing, just brief update on advocacy, and Yasmin was just talking about how the only lever that works in terms of resolving better staff and teacher pay is revenues, and that's where state funding and the funding gap is probably our most important issue. We're not unique, and that would be the most important issue to every high-performing charter. We've been told by Addie Smith Gomez, that a number of you have met, who's our policy advisor, that there is some support for legislation that might close that gap. I don't have a way of assessing the likelihood of that, but that's encouraging. Because this is an important issue for us on the revenue side, we're going to have discussions, and we'll probably come to the board in February or March and discuss having some sort of advocacy committee in order to coordinate our efforts more professionally. And Kevin Bryant, we talked to initially about being involved in that because he understands that topic better than most of us. But that's an item for future board meetings, but I share it because if you have an interest in that area, please raise your hand. Regardless of what we do there, an important board duty, and this is Board of Governors, Board of Trustees, is we want to get people in the community into our schools to do tours. And that doesn't matter if they are pro-charter or they're anti-charter, because we think that getting people into our schools and having them see our scholars and how our scholars are learning ultimately long-term is very good for our mission. So that's really the only thing in this area that I would put in the board duty category, and that is getting people out to see our schools. If you have interest as an individual in getting more involved beyond that, please talk to me or Kevin or others, and we'll figure out how to coordinate that. But anyway, that's about all we have on advocacy. I just invite any advice or thoughts, and we'll be coming back to the board with a discussion item sometime this winter or spring.
Deborah has one more handout that she's going to pass out, but not discuss.
And
We're now open forum. We've had a couple of guests who've joined us, and even though they haven't filled out speaker cards, if anyone would like to address the board, they're more than welcome to. We can call on them.
thank you.
Hi, my name is Donna Mundine, and I've been with the Uplift family since my son was in 6th grade. He's now in the 10th grade. And going back to what the gentleman spoke on earlier about teachers and, being, I guess my question is retention. There's a big issue with retention. And with retention, there has to be stability. So I'm struggling with the retention and stability. I know we get a lot of first-year teachers. We get teachers from Teachers of America. They come through. But what are we doing to retain these good teachers that we get that don't stay? In the middle of the school year, we lost a teacher in our practical writing class. That's a college credit course. That class is crucial. How are these kids going to learn how to write essays and construct a proper paragraph when we don't have stability? So what are we doing to retain these teachers, to keep them in these positions for these kids to be successful, to even apply to write an essay to get into college, since our selling tool is road to college?
Retention is the number one thing that I personally pay attention to, and the update, and I apologize, I don't know if you were here for the update I gave just a little while ago. That's okay. So, it's all right. The work that we are doing with Bellwether Consulting, which is an education consulting firm, is directly related to teacher retention. When we talk with our teachers who leave us, they talk about how they love Uplift, but they are getting $5,000 to $7,000 more from traditional ISDs who have a larger funding options available to them than public charter schools have. And so that's why this work of closing the compensation gap, even though we can't close it fully, we know that that's a key lever for retention, and it's so important to our staff. And then the second thing our staff tells us is the gift of time, and hence why we've pushed back the start of Uplift School. We'll be announcing that to parents in February, and also given additional flexibility around summer professional development in response to our teachers and their feedback. So we're all hoping that all of the work we've been doing over the past several months to directly respond to their top concerns will help us have improved retention rates.
For first-year teachers, they really struggle because the demand is so great on them, and trying to get the kids' grades and trying to have instructional time. I just think in any area, corporate America, anywhere, there's always room for improvement. I just think there may need to be a little bit more improvement on the front end before these teachers ever even start in the classroom. I think the transition that they go through and the training that they go through, and I know they have shadowers that come in and check on them from time to time, I know that. But I think on the front end, before they ever step in that classroom, know what they're up against and try and gear the training toward the main problem. We thrive on data. And if you do a data research on the new teachers that we lose, what was the main thing that they struggled with before they ever stepped into that classroom? And it's a vigorous course for the first-year teacher. So absolutely. I think we should start on the front end, preparing them a little bit more.
The other thing, and I really appreciate that question, because if there's a topic that gives me gray hair in my role, it's that one. Some of the programs, Rich, we're trying to work on, I think are worth commenting on. We've discussed them at prior board meetings, like urban teachers and all that. Would you touch on those, please?
Sure. So one of the things that we're looking to launch for the next school year is a resident teacher program. You're absolutely right. The runway is very short for a new teacher who joins at Uplift. The systems that they have to learn, the high expectations, the culture, and the expectation to drastically outperform national trends.
And
some of
pay
those,
less.
and that's who we are. So one of the programs that we're looking into, that we're starting, hopefully if everything goes well for the next school year, is a resident teacher program. So we're looking to take on 75 resident teachers and give them a year-long runway. So these teachers will come to our network, commit for 4 years. The first year is truly a resident teacher experience where they will be paired with a teacher for a semester, and then they'll switch teachers. So let's say if there's a high school or someone who wants to teach secondary math, they'll they'll work with a middle school math teacher, semester 1, high school, semester 2, or vice versa. And truly be a support in the room, take small doses of teaching, small group activities. They're going to get 13 to 1,500 hours of in-class time before they become a teacher of record. That's in partnership with a group called Urban Teachers that has a successful program in the Baltimore, D.C. public schools. And the great thing about this too is that it is also in partnership with Johns Hopkins University. So they'll also get a master's from Johns Hopkins, which was recently rated the #1 education school in the country. So we're hoping that with the long-term commitment, the year-long runway, and some focused graduate work, that's a little bit different from what we currently have now. We definitely do need to have programs to prepare the first-year teacher because we need them, but we're trying to be thoughtful about making sure that each year 70 to 75 resident teachers are coming up through this type of formal program. We've been in conversations as well with some other resident teacher development providers nationally, and we're hoping that over the next few years that there are 2 or 3 exclusive partners that Uplift can work with, or some universities that we can work with to ensure that level of readiness you're talking about. Because you're absolutely right, it is very difficult to sustain, and our hope is that with a couple of programs, we'll start growing the percentage of teachers that have that long runway that are going back to year 1, when they become a teacher of record in year 2.
That sounds awesome. I'm looking forward to that. I plan to stay till he's 12th grade, so I'm looking forward to that. Sign on to help with this.
Well, join us in Austin, please, for any conversation.
Hey, I will.
That's great.
I will. Thank you so
And we'll make sure she has your contact information.
And I've got one other comment too, that the board is very aware of this situation, very concerned, the entire board, and we've been working on a strategic plan. And our focus has been for the next 18 months, that is the key element of the plan that we're working towards. So we hear you, so thank you very much.
I love stability.
Yeah, so do we.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Do we have anyone else who from the community that wants to speak? Open forum? Okay. Well, thank you very much. That was very constructive. And with no further business, do I need to do a motion to adjourn, or are we just adjourned?
I think we do a motion.
Can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned.